Hey guys, thanks for tuning into my channel. Today we're at the Puget Sound Fly Company. They are our local premier fly fishing outfitters located in Tacoma, Washington. And these guys are the experts. And when I need some advice, this is where I go. So today we're gonna talk about fly line, whether it's floating line or sinking line. We're gonna talk about all the different floating line that is out there and what fly line is best for whatever fishing that you are going to go do. All right, I got the mask on. Sorry if it sounds a little muffled, but let's go head into the Puget Sound Fly Company. All right, let's do this. Hi, buddy. How you doing, buddy? All right, we are inside the Puget Sound Fly Company. We're here with Anil. He's the resident guru, fly fishing guru. We're going to talk a little bit about fly lines. You can see there is a ton of choices, and we decided we're going to talk about what the most common fly line is. It's a 5-weight, and just kind of the different fly lines that are out there, why you might want to choose one or the other. So, thanks, Anil. I appreciate you talking to us today about this. So, thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I tried to grab mostly 5s here because of everything going on with the pandemic. A couple of times I had to cheat and grab a 5, a 4, or a 6, but you'll get the idea. These are all really common sort of trout sizes, and you know, we can talk about why you're going to purchase one type of fly line versus another.
Perfect. So we got a lot of line here.
A lot of line, and I grabbed some sinking stuff too just to show you, but we're going to focus on floating lines here. One of the things, you know, going into a fly shop or looking online or whatever, however you're purchasing your line, it can be really intimidating because in addition to, you know, having 3 or 4 major brands, every one of these brands has a fly line that, you know, maybe it even specializes in something that you don't know what that is. Right. So you're like, I don't know if I want this product. I don't even know what that's supposed to be. You know, how do I know if I want it to do that well or not? And I would just tell you that it isn't, for the most part, just marketing and gimmicks. There are legitimate reasons to have these lines, or at least I believe there are. We wouldn't have these. There are certainly lines we don't carry because I think they're redundant. But at the same time, you don't need to choose a cold weather redfish line when you go fishing. You can choose a line that does that pretty well and does other things pretty well. So when I'm selling a line to somebody, whether they're new or they've been doing this for their whole lives, I always sort of say, hey, what rod is it? What are you doing? Where are you going? And then always, what else are you doing? You know, I got a cabin, I fish one creek, and I want it to do this. We can get really specialized. Or, I don't know, just got this fly rod. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what I'm going to like. Small streams, you know, and so we can help with either one. There is a fly line for everybody and everybody in between. Perfect. And sometimes, you know, I tell people it's kind of like a Swiss Army knife. You know, the line that does everything rarely does anything particularly well, but it can do everything. And then at other times you have a flexible fillet knife that you wouldn't want to do half of the things that you're going to do with a knife or more, but it does one thing really well and maybe 2 things. So that's kind of how fly lines are too. A really popular line that we sell, just a Rio mainstream. It's a $40 fly line. In addition to being less expensive than most of these, it's actually kind of made for beginners, although they don't necessarily want to market it just for beginners. It's a higher turnover line. It's a shorter weight forward line, which means the weight's more compressed in a shorter area. You need less line outside of your rod to get it to do the work for you. And it turns over your leader with some authority, with some power. Okay. which is neither a good or a bad thing in and of itself. It depends on what you're doing, but generally for beginners, your problem isn't that you have too much going out there, it's that it's barely going or not going at all. So this is designed to sort of help you kick it over. And I just chose Rio today primarily. I think I cheated and grabbed one, but just to show you, this is trying to keep it with one brand, just to show you some of the varieties. This is also a very popular line with us. This is sort of at the other end of the price spectrum. That was a $40 line. This is a $120 line. This is sort of they've got two in this category, but I would say this is their most popular trout line for somebody that's, you know, been doing this for a long time. I would also like to just interject here when I talk about fly lines. I used the metaphor of knives earlier, I'm going to change it up. It's kind of like tires on your vehicle. One of the most common things people will say to me is, oh, I'm just starting out, give me the cheapest line you got, because I'm not going to know the difference. And I always tell people it's kind of like saying, hey, my daughter's just got her license, I got this all-wheel drive car for her, you know, it's going to be easy, just throw some bald crappy tires on it for her, she's just a beginner. You know, and it's really the same. The kind of things that make a fly line better primarily are that it floats higher. So when you're casting it out there and you want your line to float and so that you can control it and you can pick it up to cast again, it makes it much easier. So that when it's going through the guides, it shoots a little easier. And this might just mean you get a couple of extra feet in your cast, but you know, when we're out there, sometimes a couple of extra feet means the difference between getting it there and not.
Right, totally. And that's a great analogy too.
So yeah, it really does. You know, we put our money where our mouth is. Everybody that works here, I mean, we buy the best fly lines we can afford because it makes as big or probably a bigger difference in your fishing performance than the rod does. So if fly lines had lifetime warranties, I tell people, you know, people would happily spend $500 on them because it's such an important part of the performance of your whole outfit. Unfortunately, they do wear out, and so I understand why people don't, you know, cringe at spending that kind of money. Now, fortunately, if you're new to fly fishing, it's not like a monofilament mainline on your spinning rod. You don't replace this every year, unless, hats off to you, you're doing more fishing than me. You know, you can wear one out, but most people, this will last them about 5 years.
Yeah, and that's about what it lasts me as well. Is if you take care of it, clean it, and
exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of an investment, but it does last for a while. And for an occasional fisherman, especially if you stored it in a cool place, you know, without UV light, like your garage, like most people do, it'd probably last you 10 years. So why would you want to go more specialized? So here's I use the example of the guy that lives on a cabin and fishes only one stream. You know, obviously that sounds pretty fun to me, but if you do some variety, maybe you have a rod that you do certain things with. Like this is a technical trout line. And what that means is it's pretty much the opposite of that mainstream line I showed you guys earlier. It's designed for an expert caster, and it's designed literally to slow down your cast at the end so that it lands as softly as it can for technical trout, which are trout, frankly, that just get fished too much. There's too much fishing pressure, it's usually clear water, they're very selective about what they're eating because they've been caught a half dozen times or more in their life. So that's really what technical trout fishing is. Some people think that sounds like the coolest thing in the world. They really get excited by the challenge of it. Oh, it was a size 22 and my leader was 14 feet long and I had to wait for 30 minutes until the fish started rising and all that kind of stuff. And then other people, that sounds like a nightmare, you know, and that's the other beauty about fly fishing, you know, kind of if you use these fly lines as a metaphor, because if you go over here, we can pan out later maybe, there's something in this sport, you know, almost for anybody. You know, there's big game saltwater stuff, there's little creek trout that are barely bigger than your hand maybe. You know, and so that's kind of the thing about these fly lines. You can say, hey, I got a 5-weight and I want to try as much as I can. Something like a Rio Gold, or hey, I've got 17 fly rods, I've been doing this for 40 years or whatever, and I have one rod that I do technical trout fishing when I go to Idaho every spring with my wife, and we stay in Sun Valley and I fish this really technical stream, and that's what I got this for. Something cool that a lot of people do with their trout rods, 5, 6s and stuff around here is they fish the saltwater right here for sea run cutthroat. So this is one of those very specialized lines. To use the metaphor again, it's the fillet knife maybe of your knife block. I tell people this one is currently my favorite line for the sea run cutthroat fishing. Because the whole thing sinks and you're fishing on rocky beaches, you really do need some kind of a stripping basket with this line. It is, again, my favorite. I consider it the best beach line currently. It is a very good beach line, excellent. It is a very good lake line for like woolly buggers and leeches and stuff like that. And it is a horrible river line. So that becomes the issue if you say, hey, starting out, I'm hoping to go to the beach. That's my first place, but I want to go to the Yakima. I want to go to Montana. I want to go wherever I can. Unfortunately, you're going to have to compromise. Go with a weight forward floating line, and maybe it's not the greatest beach line, but it's going to be a much better river line. And again, maybe it's a little bit of a Swiss Army knife situation, not the screwdriver you hope to have, but if it's the only screwdriver you have, it's a great screwdriver.
Right, what I've done is I'll have multiple spools for the same reel. So if I have a favorite reel that I'm using, now I've got maybe 2 to 3 different lines on that same reel that I could use.
Exactly. And it really, again, for the person starting out, if you are the typical customer that says, hey, just starting out, I'm going to do this occasionally. I like to backpack. We live in a great area for outdoor activities. I ride my mountain bike. And I see all this beautiful water, or I used to fish with my mom, or whatever your story is, and you say, hey, I just want to get something. You get a 9'5" weight, you get a weight forward floating line, and that may be all you ever need in terms of lines. You can go fish lakes and rivers, these high mountain things, that's probably all you're ever going to need. But someday, you might say, hey, I'm going to do this sea run cutthroat fishing, and you really like it, and go, the people with these sinking lines are doing a little better. Or maybe it's a hot day in the summer and you're fishing the lake that you always catch fish in and there's nothing going on and you know that it's 20 feet deep. Maybe you get a full sinking line. Again, that's not something I would ever recommend you start with.
Right, not the easiest to cast.
No, not particularly easy to cast, although they've come a long ways in terms of that. But just really kind of a one-trick pony. So great for a few things, a few situations. And sometimes the person that has this is the only one catching fish, and that really is why all these exist.
Right.
Because in the back of our little reptilian brains, we all want to be the person out there that's
Totally.
catching all the fish.
Exactly.
And again, if that means, I got to get another spool, and maybe it only happens a few times out of the year, but when it gets warm out and it's sunny and everybody's fishing with floating lines and they can't catch anything, I'm the one that has that, and I'm catching fish.
You're the guy that's envied.
I'm the smug one. So then there are also some other specialty lines. This is a really cool line. It's actually made for really small two-handed rods, spey rods and switch rods. But it fits perfectly on a 9'5" weight. This size does. And you can take your 9'5" weight and cast it pretty much exactly like you would a spey or two-handed rod. And if you're not familiar with it, you can do some Googling of casting videos. Just Google spey casting or two-handed fly casting. But the beauty of this is it lends itself to fishing with streamers and small rivers. So fishing with bait fish patterns and woolly buggers and leeches and things like that. And you really don't need very much room to cast behind you. So again, not something I would tell somebody that came in for their first rod and reel. But if you like to do, and in the Northwest, we have a lot of brushy rivers with not a lot of backcast room. So this is not as specialized a line as you might think, but it is specialized enough where I would not recommend it for someone unless they had that weight forward floating line already to do so many other things. Right?
So what's the other line that they have there, the extreme indicator?
So this is an example of a different kind, again, very specialized. If you're new to fly fishing, you can kind of tune out as I get a little bit technical here, but nymph fishing requires you typically to throw a strike indicator. I'm not talking about European nymphing or Czech nymphing. This is nymph fishing with an indicator. But they make a specialty line for this because, again, you can use your regular reel gold and do pretty well with it, very well in fact. But if this is a rod that you use exclusively for this use, or this is a spool that you have because you do quite a bit of this nymph fishing, this one is particularly good for it. What that means is it has a longer wake forward section so that you can mend and roll cast with it at longer distances. Because they know with a strike indicator and a weighted nymph and probably some split shot or putty on there, it's never going to land delicately anyway. And even an expert caster couldn't make it, and it's really not a factor for you because typically you're casting so far away from the fish and they're deep and all these other things. So they've made no compromises towards making it land delicately. I always tell people it's for throwing junk. You know, it's for throwing, it's not going to be pretty, but it's going to get there.
Right.
So again, if you were the person that said, well, I also want to fish dry flies and I'm going to go with my friend to Montana and we're going to be fishing small dry, well, again, this would not be the line for that. But it does, the nice thing is you can do some double duty because it has so much junk throwing capabilities.
Right.
It's not my favorite, but it's a very good bass line as well. So, you know, for throwing bigger flies in general. And these last two, I don't know why I grabbed this one. This is just a different brand of that one, basically.
Okay.
They would kill me if I said that, but that's kind of the truth. Very similar. I mean, I would not say that there are no differences. There certainly are. But again, I'm nothing but using analogies and metaphors. It's like choosing a half-ton pickup truck. It's not that there's no differences between the Ford, the Chevy, and the Dodge, but there are differences about what you prefer. It's not like one of them can pick up a sheet of plywood and the other ones can't. This is a very specialized line. It's actually made for bamboo fly rods.
Oh,
not
okay.
something most people have, but if you happen to have a bamboo fly rod, the guides were much smaller because they did use silk lines when a lot of the rods were designed. So this is a line that would work very well on a bamboo rod, and not that you couldn't use any line off the shelf that you would, but this one works a little bit better and probably not as well on most graphite rods too.
Awesome. No, thank you very much. That's
Yeah.
a great information, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me about that today. So thank you.
Hopefully that was helpful.
That's awesome. It was, and we'll do the pandemic fist bump. Thanks.
Talk to you
Appreciate
later.
it.
Thanks.